Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Murphy Mancini, and I'd like to welcome you virtually to the balcony here at the First Religious Society, Unitarian Universalist of Newburyport, Massachusetts. I'm really excited to share a little bit of music with you here this evening. It's raining very lightly here in Newburyport, and I hope the weather is cooperating with you wherever you are. I serve here as the Director of Church Music, and I preside over this beautiful instrument built in 1834 by local Newburyporter Joseph Alley. It's a beautiful, amazing artifact of a period of organ building that sadly has almost disappeared, but thankfully it is preserved here in our beautiful 1801 meeting house. It's a room full of history and beauty, and I'm so glad I can share it with you online since we have to be physically apart. It's a really challenging time here, and it's challenging for a lot of people. And the staff here at FRS has been trying to get really creative about how we might bring people together, connect with people, and share our gifts in new and often unfamiliar ways. And as I looked on Facebook and read the news, I was struck by how many stories there were of artists who struggle because their entire source of income is now completely gone because live performance or live exhibitions are just not possible at this time. And so I wanted to use our resources here, because we can stream on YouTube and we've been doing so, to offer some music to you and hopefully raise a little bit of money. Here in Essex County, the Essex County Community Foundation has started an artist relief fund specifically for the COVID-19 crisis. And tonight, any donations will be split 50-50 between the artist relief fund that they're running and the church here, FRS. We're facing a significant budget shortfall because of fundraising that we're no longer able to do. And so your generosity will help both the church and the Essex County Community Foundation support our community in different ways as we face this uncertain time together. So I invite you to consider being generous, and if that's not feasible for you at this time, I really hope that you enjoy the music. I picked all of these pieces because they're a little bit more reflective, they're a little more comforting, a little relaxing, and many of them are especially appropriate for the season of Lent, which is finishing up. Tonight is Maundy Thursday, and normally I feel like I would be doing services right now, and that's not really happening, so I thought we needed a little bit of music for the season. I'm going to begin tonight with a Ricercar by Girolamo Frescobaldi, a really important early Baroque composer who was a great innovator for the keyboard. This piece comes from his Fiori Musicali, which is music especially for church, so it couldn't be more appropriate than to play it right now. But of course, Frescobaldi in his challenging ways has challenged the performer by creating a puzzle in this Ricercar. As you can see from the title, if you would like a program, please do click on the More button just below your Facebook feed. Just below your YouTube feed, just below the YouTube image, you can find a link to the program and a link to the donations. And as you can see from the title, Frescobaldi has posed a challenge or a to be sung in addition to all of the playing. And my hat goes off to Joseph Bonnet, who proposed the solution that most performers use today, and I'm going to use as well. Normally, I think I would probably ask somebody for help, but that's not really an option right now, so I'm going to try to do it myself, and we'll see what happens. So here is the Ricercare con obbligo di cantare. Next, I will be sharing several selections from Bach's Orgelbüchlein. This collection of pieces is, I should probably turn the pages before I try to talk. I will do my best to occasionally glance at the camera, but as you can see, it's behind me, so that makes it a little bit complicated. These selections from the Orgelbüchlein come from, primarily from the section that he wrote on Lutheran chorales for Lent, but also on subjects that are relevant to this time period or this time of year or to the situation we find ourselves in. And these pieces are especially good for teaching. In fact, Bach put in his, on his title page that these pieces are good for teaching students how to play chorales using the pedal. All the pieces require you to use the pedal. And indeed, as a teenager, I learned all of these pieces. These were some of my very first chorale-based pieces that I ever learned. And they are not especially challenging, although they are surprisingly tricky. And I find them to be perfect short encapsulations of all of the ways that Bach was able to find musical inspiration from the Lutheran chorale. They are all of slightly different characters, although none of them are particularly aggressive. One of the things that I most appreciate about this instrument is its ability to have the coloristic resources for a composer like Bach. Joseph Alley was building instruments at a time where musical taste and organ building traditions were in transition. And so this instrument feels like it has one foot in the 18th century and one foot in the late 19th century, and that it combines elements of the Baroque approach to organ building with the nascent Romantic approach to organ building that was then amplified by George Hutchings when he rebuilt and expanded the instrument in 1889. The instrument has a fascinating history, and I encourage you to read a little bit about it in the program, because I don't think I can share every detail with you. That last chorale by Bach is a famous tune that in the United States and England is sung in Christian churches as "If Thou But Suffer God to Guide Thee." And so I'm going to now play a slightly different approach to setting that tune by the African composer Mark Fax, who is a long-time professor of music theory at Howard University and a skilled organ composer. This particular setting of the Lutheran chorale is quite different. It has a very different feeling, a different mood, with flowing triplets and a spotlight on the wonderful Cremona, a reed stop here on the swell that is the only remaining reed stop built by Joseph Alley, and so it is nearly 200 years old and a very special example of its kind. So I hope you enjoy hearing the sound of the Cremona in Mark Fax's approach to "If Thou But Suffer God to Guide Thee." That piece also got to show off some of the beautiful flute stops that are on this organ, which may actually be my favorite stops. This is my momentary eye contact, just to make sure you know that I'm still here. and that I have not been replaced by a robot. Let's stay in the American South now for a piece by the composer Margaret Vardell Sandresky, who is still alive, though she is nearing 100 years old. She taught at Salem College in North Carolina for a very, very long time and is an important scholar on the music of the Moravians, who lived in the Winston-Salem area and helped to preserve some of their beautiful organs, and is responsible for some of their music being available to a wider audience. This piece comes from her set of 5 sacred dances, each one of which has an inscription from a biblical text. Isaiah 7:2 reads, "And his heart was moved, and the heart of the people as the trees of the wood are moved with the wind." And she treats that in as a compositional inspiration that I think is a little abstract, which is great because then she's very inventive and coloristic and evocative about how she is using the instrument to a great potential. So I hope that you enjoy this beautiful sacred dance by Margaret Vardell Sandresky. I'd like to take this opportunity now to thank Rob Close, who's downstairs on the ground floor, far away from me, who is on the ones and twos, who's helping make this sound just as good as it possibly can sound and make sure the camera and the stream and everything is working. And to also thank my wonderful colleagues at FRS, especially Reverend Rebecca Bryan, Kristen Fellhaber, Nicole Salemi, and all of the staff at FRS who are working really hard to make sure that the church can remain a positive and impactful presence in people's lives during this time, and who did a lot of good work, and especially to Diane Carroll, who made the program. Now I'd like to share with you a setting of Were You There? The African American Spiritual, set by African American composer Evelyn Simpson Currington, who is a prominent composer, arranger, and conductor and performer in Washington, D.C., where she is an associate of the Smithsonian. This piece is a beautiful and quite unusual setting of the traditional spiritual tune that uses incredibly colorful harmony, drawing from many sources to create something the likes of which I don't think anybody has ever heard in any other context. It's beautiful and quite unique. Now I'd like to transition to a couple of selections by Johannes Brahms, who did not write a great deal of organ music, but everything that he wrote was beautiful and especially high quality. This fugue in A-flat minor was published in a music magazine, but didn't see publication as an opus of Brahms's. Despite that, he spent many years in his life revising it and expanding it. So it clearly had a certain special meaning to him, although we will never know exactly what it was that it meant to him. We do also know that Clara Schumann really admired the piece and kept a copy of it until she died. So it clearly has some importance in the life of these great composers. And in it we can hear Brahms struggling to figure out what it means to write fugue when Bach has written so many great fugues, and you love Bach and you just don't know exactly what you're going to do. And so Brahms takes what I would like to call a kitchen sink approach. He writes it in A-flat minor, a very difficult key. He writes the subject in inversion. He writes the subject in augmentation and diminution, which are all transformations of the original theme. He writes a double fugue and a triple fugue, and writes a very complex counterpoint. Yet you will hear it, I think, almost as a symphonic movement. This could be a slow movement of the Brahms symphony in I don't know, D flat major that was never written. It has that dramatic arc and scope to it that you can hear in Brahms's symphonic music. So that makes it very special. It is both a fugue and a symphony movement, and I hope you enjoy this incredible piece. That's one of those pieces that makes me feel like an octopus, which is my way of not trying to totally ruin the mood, but it always feels like I have to have an extra arm to play that piece, or an extra foot. Both would be nice. So Brahms wrote that piece originally in 1856, revising it many times, but it's the music of a younger man. And now I'd like to move to the very last music that Brahms probably wrote, the last two chorale preludes from his set of 11 that were published as his Opus 122, which were not published until after he had died. These pieces he wrote in mid-1896, and while he was living in the countryside, and they are incredibly beautiful. They're very similar. They're the organ version. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I want to say. They're the organ version of his intermezzi, the solo piano pieces that are very often played by pianists that come from a few years earlier. They're rather short. They're contained, but they contain everything wonderful about Brahms's music. So first, we'll hear his setting of the chorale, which is it's also used to set the text, "O Sacred Head Now Wounded," so perfect for Passiontide. And then we'll hear his setting of the chorale, "O World, I Must Leave You." So these are numbers 10 and 11. They are quite contrasting in character, but still incredible works of mature Brahms. We have reached the end of our journey this evening. I thank you for joining me, and before we get to the last piece, I just want to say thank you again for joining me and sharing this wonderful music. I'm so glad to be able to continue to share music with everybody, even though it's online. And while that may not be the ideal way to hear the organ, I think the power of live music can still communicate across such great distances. I will just ask you again to consider being generous and making a donation in the link below the YouTube screen to support the work of this church, the First Religious Society, and the Essex County Community Foundation Artists Fund. A lot of people are in great need right now, and that probably includes every one of us. And if you have the means to do so, I would encourage you to be generous. And if you do not, I hope that you have enjoyed a little bit of music and respite from what are often difficult days. But I think what has always heartened me about what I see online and occasionally in person from a great distance is that people have found strength in community and have found ways to come together metaphorically or ideologically, if not physically. And I think that bodes well for us. And I hope that this can be one small contribution to that. This evening could not have been done, as I said, without the staff here at FRS, whom I thank most greatly for all of their support and their help in making this happen, and especially Rob downstairs on the ones and twos. I think that's all I have to say in terms of the not music things. So now let me turn to the last piece on the program, which is Samuel Barber's Variations on Wondrous Love. I want to say that it's my favorite hymn, but that's a dangerous thing to say because there are many great hymns. This hymn comes out of the shape note singing tradition, the sacred harp tradition of the American South, and appeared sometime in the early 19th century, although we don't know who originally wrote it. And since the 20th century, it has captured the attention of members of churches of all denominations for its incredible beauty and the power of its text. Here, Barber is writing on commission for a friend of his who was playing the dedication recital for a Holtkamp organ in Michigan, and Barber sets this beautiful melody. Barber tended not to use melodies that were not his own because his gift for writing melody was quite significant, but here he chooses an appropriately churchy subject matter and treats it with just incredible skill and variety. And it is in 1, 2, 3, I should try to remember, 5 contrasting variations, starting with a quite simple presentation on this, just one of my favorite stops on the organ, the swell open diapason, and then moves on building in energy until he takes the theme and completely transforms it in the final variation, leaving behind any real, clear presentation of the theme, instead treating it as inspiration for the emotional apotheosis of the piece. I hope you enjoy this incredible piece, one of my very favorites. It's always a good idea to make sure you're on the right memory level. I've done that twice tonight, which I think I'm going to ascribe to the circumstances that we're in and how stressful they are, and they can make us a little forgetful. Now I'm on the right memory level, and I have all the stops that I should have, so let's try that again. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. Just one more shout out to all of my colleagues here, and I hope that you all have a wonderful evening. Please do consider being generous this evening, even if it's only $1 or $2. A little goes a long way right now, and I hope that you all are staying safe, staying healthy, staying inside as much as you can. I think we need each other more now than ever, and we still need art. And I'm so glad that I and artists like me can use the internet to connect with all of you and share our gifts during this very challenging time. And I hope that you all have a very good night. Thank you.